it's not about what you're doing or what you're not doing. It's about what you're not telling your partner. That is the important thing. I want people to take this. If you have something to hide, it's not right. So if you can do it with your partner watching, by all means. If they don't care, go for it. But if you're hiding stuff because you know it's wrong, then you're out of integrity with yourself and you are not going to go out and do your greatest work because there's going to be an inner conflict that you're still dealing with.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Better Than Rich show. I'm your host, Andrew Biggs, here today, and I am so excited about our special guest, Ian Koniak, here today. Ian is a dear friend of mine. He's somebody who I go way back with, and he currently helps B2B account executives perform to their fullest potential to crush their quota, master their mindset, their habits, and their skills so they can perform at the highest level. He has an amazing story. He did over $100 million in sales at a little company called Salesforce and was the number one account executive there for years and years. And Ian, I'm so excited to dive in with you on your story, on what you bring to the table, what it means to be better than rich. So welcome to the show, man. I'm so glad you're here.
Good to see you, brother. And for anyone listening, my whole story started with, well, it didn't start. It started with my parents, but Biggs was a big part of the story because he introduced me to personal development and masterminds. And he actually was the sales rep who got me to sign up for, at the time, a mastermind called Epic Impact. And that was kind of my journey into personal development, which has continued intensely for the past 6 years. Mm-hmm. So I would not be here doing this podcast were it not for you. So it's great to reconnect after all this time. I know we've talked a lot in between, but like it's all coming full circle.
Of course. And so for any of you who think cold emails don't work, Ian is a testament. Some random email about Tony Robbins ended up transforming his life and obviously my life as well as I've gotten to know you, man. So I'm just so glad you're here and I'm excited to dive in. So one of the more interesting parts that I would love to dive in with as a starting point. I remember when I first chatted with you, you're like, "Look, man, I'm doing well. I make $250,000 a year. I got some a good thing going out here in the Southern California area. I drive my Maserati. Like life is good." And also there was something missing. And I just think it's so perfect for the Better Than Rich show to talk about what life is like when you are successful, but you still feel empty. I'd love to maybe start there. What was that like for you? And how has life been since you had some of these big realizations that you've had?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because what was empty at the time, frankly, I was comfortable, but I knew that I wasn't performing to my full potential. You see, there were people in Salesforce that were making 7 figures, that were the top of their game. And that's why I'd gone to Salesforce. I'd left a pretty successful position. I had 80 employees and was working at a Fortune 500 company before going to Salesforce. I wasn't going there to make 250. I was already doing that. I was going there to actually get to the elite level at sales. And when I went and joined Epic Impact at the time, I'd come off missing quota for 3 years in a row. And the third year I missed it just barely. And it was the most painful feeling in the world. Okay. The feeling that you're not performing to your full potential, that you were put on this earth to do great things and you're just kind of living a mediocre life. Now I know 250K may not sound mediocre, but in the world of Salesforce, that's smack in the middle. I mean, if you're doing that, you're probably not even hitting your plan. So fundamentally, I was not feeling good about myself, regardless of what that income was. I knew I wasn't performing as good as I could. And, that's why I initially joined is so I could perform better. And frankly, I did. I performed. I went from average to number one globally. I cracked 7 figures and there was still something missing. So at first, what was missing was the ability to achieve what I knew I was capable of. But once I achieved that level that I knew I was capable of, I still didn't have what I was looking for. And that's the interesting thing. So really the answer to your question is, what's it like to chase money and not feel fulfilled, right? And it feels like really crappy. It feels like, man, why am I unhappy? I should be more grateful. I have a great life. Things are going well. Why do I feel like, there's a void in my life? And that was something that I really, frankly, didn't actually ever find that inner peace or find that true mission or purpose until I had done some very, very deeper work later on myself through therapy, through addiction recovery, through
Mm.
some of my faith, where that void actually finally got filled. So I would just say for people chasing money or success or external, you know, reputation or status, you can spend all your time thinking it's going to get you what you want. But once you get there, you'll realize, hey, maybe this isn't actually what I wanted. And that was kind of my journey up to that point. And once I, realized that,
Mm.
that's when the real work began that I started.
Yeah. Do you mind telling us a little bit more, like telling me a little bit more about what does that mean? Like, what did the real work really entail? Because I'd say it's probably like, yeah, a couple years into your personal development journey. First off, you went from making, $250,000 to $1 million plus a year, which is obviously incredible in and of itself. But then at that point, something shifted even more, right? You mentioned therapy, you mentioned addiction. What were you looking for, and how did you actually find it?
So part of the work, so I felt like, my career, what I was doing was great. I was making money. I had a good lifestyle for my family, but it wasn't very fulfilling. So I was helping companies improve their efficiency, grow their sales, grow their revenue. But I realized like I really wasn't helping people at the level that I felt like I was called to do. And so part of the work was in 2019, you and I, Andrew and I,
Hmm.
go way, way back. We joined a program called Brand Builders Group, and it was how do you actually, and that evolved into what you're doing and what I'm doing now. And it was really like how can you be serving others, right? So that was something I was just serving myself, was very fairly selfish. So I thought the work that I wanted to do was like, how do I use the blessings that I've had, the gifts that I've been given, and the experiences that I've gone through to actually help others um, improve their life and better their situations. And I started to do that work, and I created a personal brand, and I spent the better part of 2019, after having 2 great years at Salesforce, starting a business and coaching others. Well, all that came crashing to a halt in 2020,
Hmm.
and this was right around the time of the pandemic. And while I was building a brand and continuing to perform at Salesforce, what happened is my ego got fairly big. I got into this place where I thought I was God's gift to the world. I was this great salesperson, and now my brand was doing well. People wanted to pay me for my time. It was really ego boost. And anytime your ego gets really big, that's when the devil will come for you really hard. I say the devil, I mean energy, I mean the dark side. I mean, there are forces. When you go too big, you fall on your face, right? So whatever you believe, fundamentally, there is this common thread where when ego, the higher you fly, the farther and the harder you fall. And that's kind of what happened to me. I was getting into a place where like I was thinking I was great. I was also stressed out a lot, and I started turning to addiction as a way to like. It wasn't even like a way to cope. It was like, yeah, I deserve this. I'm gonna party hard and go on benders at Vegas, go get drunk, go like celebrate. It was this. I remember. I'll tell you. So my addiction was sex and porn. Okay, and obviously I
Hmm.
also had other addictions and tendencies too: gambling, pot, alcohol, you name it, right? It was this like kind of sales culture of like wild, craziness. But one time I had just closed the biggest deal in my career. And it was like I went out with my SE and we went and celebrated. And I just remember getting so drunk and I was flirting with women. I took off my wedding ring at a nightclub. I was just acting completely inappropriate for a married man and for, and I remember flirting with this girl. I had a woman. I had my arm around her. I mean, she must have been half my age. And I'm like, I thought that was like it was like this bro kind of frat boy culture thing. Like I wanted to get my satisfaction of knowing that I was a badass. So like my worth was always coming from like making a lot of money or respect from other people or attention from women. Okay,
Hmm.
and that's an empty, shitty existence. Okay, so fast forward to 2020, and my marriage was actually suffering. I had been distancing myself from my wife because I'd worked so much and I had personal brand. I kind of like wanted her to change. I was like, look, I'm doing all these great things. Why don't you do these great things too? And I wanted her to like stay busy and make friends. And all she wanted was my time and my attention and actually my presence and love. And I was so consumed with myself that I couldn't give that to her. And frankly, that's that's something that had caused a pretty big rift in our marriage, and all the while I'm hiding my addictive tendencies because my wife had been previously married to an alcoholic, and I made her a promise that I wasn't going to do that. Certainly, the porn and the sex was not something that I was sharing. She was Christian, she is Christian, and that was definitely against her idea of what faithfulness in marriage was. And I was doing things like going to strip clubs. I mean, a lot of my story, but fundamentally, I was living this wild double life. Okay. And I started feeling really guilty about it through the bulk of 2019. I made some horrible choices, did some things were out of integrity with my marriage. And I started wanting to like ease my conscience. So I started telling her about the porn and telling her about certain things, but not telling her all of it. And I hit a rock bottom. It was February 13th, and this was it was 2020. And I started telling her about my porn habit, and then I told her I'd actually gone on web cameras, where live women were there's a lot of sites where it's like interactive, and so I had gone to that, and she collapsed, fell to the ground. She was pregnant and started having contractions while with pregnant. So I was like, at that time, my world stopped. This was my rock bottom. You always hear about this in addiction, but for me, that was the time when you only think you're hurting yourself. But when you see your partner collapse to the ground, shaking uncontrollably, literally like she was having a seizure, and then start to have contractions, and then you think you are going to murder your unborn child through what you did, your world just gets flipped upside down. And that's what happened to me. That was my rock bottom. We rushed to the hospital, and all I could do was pray. Hadn't been a religious person up to that point, but I started praying, and I said, God, do not take this baby. I don't care what I need to do. I don't care, who I need to become. Please do not take this baby. I will do whatever it takes. And I'm so proud. I'm so proud of the man I am now versus, who I was then, because we get to the hospital, we get to the doctor, he puts on the ultrasound, and I swear to you, it was probably 30 seconds of, him looking around. And the whole time I'm just thinking, there's no heartbeat. The baby's dead. And it was just the longest period. And then he goes and he says, there's a heartbeat. He looks up, he's like, there's a heartbeat. I'm like, oh, thank God. I'm like, well, what is it, doctor? What's going on? He's like, these aren't labor contractions, Ian. She's not in labor. These are stress contractions. Your wife body's under so much stress that her stomach's contracting because of shock. And like, what happened? Did you cheat on her? Like, you got a girlfriend? Like, what's causing this? And I'm like, well, I told her some things that she didn't know about. And at that point, I was like, that was it. That was it. And that's when the Lord came into my life. That's when God did his work. And that was the deep work. The deep work for me was looking at myself, not as how I wanted to project myself, but in the true way, which is a sinner, looking at myself as somebody who was not loyal, who is not honest, who actually wasn't good at all. The work is humbling myself and realizing everything I thought mattered and all the values that I had, none of that mattered, because I nearly caused the death of my unborn child through what I was. So me thinking I was great, my ego just dissolved in that time. And that got me into my path of recovery. That got me in my path of finding my faith, finding, a path to recovery. It's been 2.5 years, over 2.5 years now since I've last viewed porn. I haven't gotten drunk during that time. I haven't smoked pot. So I've made some major changes. I got off Adderall, and it's only possible through my faith and through, frankly, the humility of realizing that all these things that I thought I wanted in life, none of it mattered if I wasn't a person who could look in the mirror and be happy with the person I am and live with integrity. And now I'm living a life of integrity where I have nothing to hide. I went through a process with my wife where I told her everything. I went through a full disclosure where I told her everything I'd ever done. That was a secret. And that was like truly, truly the most liberating, biggest weight off my shoulder. And you know what? I risked her leaving and losing my family, but it was the right thing, because then it was her choice, knowing who I was, whether she wanted to stay or go, versus staying because of a lie or what she didn't know. And that's the work I challenge any man in a marriage to do. If you have secrets or things you've done, if you come clean, I wouldn't challenge you to do it if you've done some really, disingenuous or really, things that are out of integrity. Like, don't do it by yourself and just go tell her everything. Go get the help that I got. This was a gradual process. I had a therapist. I was in 12-step meetings, but fundamentally, the most free man in the world is the one with nothing to hide. And I truly do not have anything to hide with my wife anymore. And it's like the best feeling in the world, because she did leave and then she came back and she said, I want this to work. We have a beautiful 2 boys. And now I've done the work that is going to change the generational pattern that was in my family, coming from my grandpa to my dad to my brother to me. That work is now stopped with me, and my kids will have a man of integrity as a father and not someone who's living a lie. So yeah, that's the work that I'm referring to really find peace and fulfillment.
Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing, man, and just being willing to be so open. And obviously, you have nothing to hide with your wife. You have nothing to hide here on this podcast, and just share the story. I mean, it's so
It's
cool
true.
that,
It's true, because
yeah,
that's right. It's right. It's like, I don't mind sharing this because that's not who I am anymore.
correct.
That's the beautiful thing about it. And if a man can listen to this and get, or a woman or whoever's listening, and get
Mm.
some value and get some inspiration to not only change, but like to be real and honest in your life and your marriage, holy shit, I just did the work God put me on this earth to do. And that happens all the time. I get people through sharing this story opening up, and their lives just transform. So that's why I share it. It's not because they're
Absolutely.
shame. It's to help other men who struggle in silence, frankly, with
Hmm.
exactly what I struggled with.
Absolutely. And I mean, porn is just, it's so pervasive these days. If you haven't read Your Brain on Porn, if you're listening to this, and whether you struggle or not with porn, I would really recommend it. It's a book by Gary Chapman. And when I read that, I was like, holy shit, this is way more corrosive and insidious than you think. It's way more pervasive. Like, I think it's estimation about one in every 3 men is addicted to porn. And with at least the people that I chat with on a regular basis, there's a lot of guys who struggle with it. And, it's something that I've struggled with. It's something that I think a lot of people have. And it's so pervasive in our culture. It's almost expected, right, at this point. And
Yeah,
so,
it's just accepted, period.
correct.
And the type of porn now, I mean, it's, again, I was looking at live women, and to think that, and that's extremely common. It's not just me. Some of the
Sure, of course.
fast sites that's what they do, and I'm not going to name sites, but like, they're very popular, and that's not okay for anyone in a relationship to be looking at real women. It's not fantasy. It's not a video. It's a real woman who's live with you. That's cheating.
Mhm.
Sorry to say, but it's cheating.
Yeah,
I, in my denial, convinced myself it wasn't, and that's just the addiction. That's just the addiction, because it's not about what you're doing or what you're not doing. It's about what you're not telling your partner. That is the
Mhm.
important thing. I want people to take this. If you have something to hide, it's not right. So if you can do it with your partner watching, by all means. If they don't care, go for it. But if you're hiding stuff because you know it's wrong, then you're out of integrity with yourself, and you are not going to go out and do your greatest work, because there's going to be an inner conflict that you're still dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things you said is you wanted to ease your conscience, right? And so again, this is kind of a better than rich principle in theory, because one of the things that we teach is that somebody who's really practicing self leadership has an intimate relationship with their conscience. They're constantly checking in. They're constantly kind of measuring their actions on a daily basis against their conscience, and really tuning in and listening. And that makes it's a tough standard to hold yourself to, but the reflection that I've seen from you in the last several years, because of your willingness to have the courage to listen to your conscience and be convicted by your conscience and to take action, it's just been amazing. And now it's like, boom, the chains are set free on all your addictions, which is just truly amazing. So,
It really did. Yeah, yeah. It started with the porn, and then it went to the Adderall. I flushed it down the toilet. The alcohol. I have no desire to get drunk or check out. It's like, what am I checking out from? I got a great life. So it's that's the deep work. It's therapy. It's sharing your demons. It's realizing you're not alone. It's going to meetings. Like, and again, it's not just addiction. It could be depression or anxiety or whatever. But if you don't give this attention, whatever that you struggle that's holding you back, in my case, this was the thing holding me back, then you can't break free to go and do whatever God put you on this earth to do. So yeah, I mean, I love better than rich principles, and that's why I'm here, and that's why we're talking about this, because that doesn't matter. Making millions of dollars and being badass salesperson don't matter if you freaking can't look in the mirror and be fully open about who you are. I was living a lie.
I mean, it's interesting you bring up faith. Prior to a lot of these things, you never struck me as a religious guy. Right? You never struck me as somebody who is, took his faith, necessarily all that seriously. Maybe something, maybe you believed in something. I'm not sure, but didn't strike me as something that was a cornerstone of your life. It's something that for me, growing up in the church, then I kind of had a phase where I, kind of left and experimented. I moved to India. I looked at Eastern religions. I studied, Buddhism. I looked at, obviously like things like Eckhart Tolle. I looked at Advaita Vedanta, which is, basically not two, meaning oneness, like we're all one. And I found all these things to be super helpful. And, I even studied some Hinduism and some polytheism. Um, but in recent years, I've kind of like come full circle, and I'm almost like I'm back in the church, and we're back into like small group, and we're having conversations about Christianity and faith and such. And I'm just curious, how does why religion? Like, does it really matter? Because I think a lot of the world's problems, it's like there's almost like this renaissance happening that I'm witnessing. If you're paying attention, people are sick and tired of what the world is offering them, and a lot of them are running back to faith, um, even though that's not the narrative that maybe is being told that often. What's why faith for you? Like, what's your experience like there?
Yeah. So there's a big difference between faith and religion. I want to call it out. So
Sure.
faith is your connection and your belief in your higher power, and it's that moral compass that guides you to be the honest, loving, kind, genuine, caring person. That is really what Christianity calls Holy Spirit, and I'm sure there's a lot of other terms for it, but it's the God inside of you that causes you to go out and do things to help others and to really operate from a place of love and abundance. And that's at polar odds and opposites with the achiever. Often that the world is telling you to go out and hustle and grind and go make a lot of money and go do all this. So I'd kind of been living as this achiever where, I didn't have religion growing up. I didn't have faith. I didn't have spirituality. And so I was taking what the world said would make me happy and fulfilled. And look where it got me. Life of addiction and lies. And yeah, I had all that success, but it's exactly right. I'm like, I was craving, something else. And I didn't even know what it was. Now, I'd always believed that there was something bigger than myself. I had always, said the universe or, serendipity or whatever you want to call it. But the getting into a 12-step recovery specifically, you have to they say let go and let God, right? And so that's kind of the principle, is like accepting that we can't do this on our own, whereas the world tells us everything you want you have to do on your own, right? So this appeal of faith was like, hey, well, there's a couple appeals. The first appeal for me, which really struck a chord, especially with Christianity, which I relate to, but I don't think Christianity is superior to any other faith, and I don't think it's the only way. I think whatever relationship you have with your God, if it makes you a better person and guides you, that's great. And so that's something for me that I want to really call out is for me the doctrine of the gospel and Christianity and the Bible resonated because I didn't understand why I did all these things, right? I was literally looking in the mirror and I couldn't recognize myself. And I'm like, what is fucking wrong with me? Why do I go and do things that are out of integrity with my character? Why do I repeat these bad habits? And for me to like learn that we were born into sin and that human nature is to sin and that only through accepting God and Christ and really understanding that he died for our sins, for me, that was like a really nice explanation of why I was doing the things I was doing. So it appealed to me, especially in this moment of like ego disappearing and really like needing something. I needed to give some explanation of what had happened because I felt so horrible and ashamed of what I had done to my wife and what the tragedy that it nearly caused. So that was how I became a Christian, is really just understanding, hey, you know what? We were born into sin, and only through really the fruitage of the Spirit, right? And understanding like the fruit, the world, what the world tells you, and what God tells you, the fruitage of the Spirit are very different. So the fruitage of the Spirit is kindness, peace, love, patience, mildness, self-control, faith, right? Those are the things that I lacked. I was impatient. I was high, definitely wasn't mild tempered, definitely, didn't have that inner peace. So that was like the void that I was looking to fill. I'm like, hey, if I practice this, those are the things that are promised to me. And so I just made a point to like really not just like read the Bible, but incorporate my daily routines and habits and shift towards those things. So I shifted to daily prayer. I shifted towards walks with my wife and time with my family and acts of love and develop patience, and just like tried to. I didn't know a lot about Christianity, but I tried to practice and apply the principles, not just going to church and reading some stuff, because I didn't go to church. It was COVID and nothing was going on. But I did, study the Bible with my wife, and I did learn all these new things that, frankly, gave explanation as to what I had been living before and why I was so miserable, and then what I was doing now. And again, I'm not here to preach and to tell people that there's only one way to live. I know everyone has their own beliefs, but I'll tell you, not believing in anything and only believing in yourself is not, for me, it's not as nearly as fulfilling or as satisfying, I guess, is believing that there's purpose for us and that God lives within us, and we need to follow his will and understand his will for us, because that's like a forever thing. So every day, step 11 and 12-step recovery is pray for knowledge of God's will and the power to carry it through. Right. So every day I pray for knowledge and say, well, God, what do you want me to do? And if God is love, and God is like kindness, like where is the downside in showing up that way and treating people that way? And that helps me watch my temper. It helps me keep my cool. It helps me kind of stay in this like middle ground where the highs are much lower and the lows are much higher. But you know what? I feel good every single day, and it's sustainable versus this crash and burn crazy chaos that probably would have killed me. So that's the appeal for me of faith versus religion. Religion is just a way to practice it with like-minded people and connect to a community, right? And associate with whatever religion that gives you that makes the most sense to you, I would say. But I wouldn't call myself overly religious, but I do think my faith and spirituality is extremely, extremely strong.
Yeah, that's such a good explanation, and I really appreciate that. And I think that if you're listening, I hope that that appeals to you. And we're not here to try to sell you on anything, but there's like I said, not believing, like Ian said, not believing in anything is not a great solution. And um, I love what you said around step one of the 12-step recovery, that you need support. I think that's one of our biggest issues as human beings is just like pride, right? We just are so proud of ourselves. And so, I can relate to like when I want to achieve, it's like I want to do it on my own. I don't want your help, Ian. I don't want, God's help. I don't want anybody's help. I'm going to do it on my own so that I can boost my ego and make sure that I'm inflated through this achievement. And A, that's no way to live, right? Because you're basically alienating people throughout the process. And B, it's no way to live. It's not even possible to do it on your own. You're standing on the shoulders of giants. You're standing on the shoulders of your ancestors. And think about all the people who have been supporting you your entire life that, if you're not grateful for them right now, just think about, every single teacher you had, every single person in your life who did something kind, every single person at your job who sometimes maybe they annoy you, but guess what? They're doing their job too, and they help you stay employed and do what you need to do. So there's so many different ways that we are, supported.
And I would say one other thing which really resonates, and like to your point, is if you think you're relying on yourself, like where did you get the courage? Where did you get the intelligence? Where did you get the charisma? Where did you get the way you're wired? You were born that way. You're just born. You're just lucky. You're born where you were, to the parents you were, with the gifts you were. No, you're born probably in the U.S. You're probably born, hopefully, to parents that tried. Maybe they're still around, maybe they're not, but they tried to do their best and had a place, a home. You could have been born in Africa, starving with no parents, right? So you were gifted your situation, whatever that is, by something or someone. I call that gift God. God put me with my parents, one of whom suffered from addiction, the other whom was very hardworking and successful in a worldly way, for me, so I could do the work that God wants me to do in the future. Like that is so liberating and encouraging, and just makes you feel great about your situation, because it's all happening for you, right? For you to become the man that we're supposed to be, or you're supposed to be. So I think just giving some credit that like this isn't just you who's making it happen. You were gifted with whatever it is that's putting you in this situation is really humbling, and it's just a good way to glorify God who made us all very different, with each of us having unique gifts and strengths that ultimately he wants us to use for the betterment of this planet.
I love it, man. Thank you so much. I do want to shift gears slightly, and I want to ask you a few questions about what you're up to now, because there might be some people listening who would say, hey, it's really cool that you were able to make $250,000, and then, even all the way up to 7 figures as an account executive for Salesforce, be number one, and then have this sort of discovery. But I'm not that far along yet, Ian. I of course want to try to be. Of course, I want to try to incorporate many of the things that I'm learning here, and maybe avoid some of the landmines of that culture of being successful and just chasing achievement. And that's why I listen to the Better Than Rich show every single week. But at the same time, I want to make more money too, man. Like, give me some tips. Like, you got any goods for people? I mean, I'm looking here at some of your catchphrases and one-liners. Like, if we want to dive into those, we can. Or if you want to give more of a meta frame around this, you can.
Yeah.
But yeah, what would you say?
I can give some frameworks. So what I do now is I teach people how to be successful in both business and in life. And I know that sounds like very generic, but I'd like to say I teach success principles that apply to sales and entrepreneurship. And where I see the biggest impact, frankly, is not by teaching sales tactics. Because if you build sales tactics on a poor foundation of lacking integrity and lacking honesty and some of the principles that I realize what matter most, like nothing, it doesn't matter. Maybe you'll get the money, but you're not going to actually be happy or fulfilled. So what I see is a lot of people who are kind of in my situation where they're making pretty good money. They know they can do better. And the bulk of the people that have these massive, massive leaps in their income and in their life are the ones that actually shift their mindset and shift their habits. Okay. And once they do that, frankly, their work ethic shifts. And with work ethic shifting, you get more at bats, you get more experience, you learn and learn by doing, and the skills come. So I'd say 95% of success is mindset and habits. It's what we do. And the other 5% is the skills that develop through doing the right things and having the right discipline and having the right perseverance and the right resilience. So I'll give you kind of some pointers on the mindset side, and then some pointers on the habit side that I teach, a lot of principles. So the first principle I teach on the mindset side is called living with integrity. And I don't mean living with honesty and just like the stuff that I just talked about. I mean, what integrity means, the word integrity comes from the Latin word integer, which means whole or complete. So the way I define integrity is when your thoughts and your beliefs, in other words, your identity, who you are, okay, aligns with your actions and behaviors. So a lot of people have conflict inside. And the work that we do is to resolve the conflict. And the conflict is because they say one thing or they think one thing and they do another thing. And so they literally are beating themselves up over all the things they're not doing. Okay. So I'll give you just a couple quick examples. Let's say I am a person that is honest and I see myself as honest, but I'm hiding things in my marriage or from clients or whatever. Like I am literally a hypocrite, okay? And I'm out of integrity. Let's say I think I'm a hard worker, but I'm actually procrastinating and not getting shit done and playing on my phone and messing around. I am completely out of integrity because I'm delusional at that point. Like I think I'm one thing, but then my actions. So the work you do is, on the one hand, you have your identity, how you see yourself, what you say and what you think, and then how you show up every day. So we identify, how do you see yourself, and then are you showing up this way every day? So if you see yourself as healthy, are you eating healthy? If not, what needs to change? Are you working out? If not, how can we incorporate those routines? Those are the things. And I do a 30-day challenge. I say, well, what can we do in 30 days to change and make that integrity? I have a chart. It's called Living with Integrity. And there's two lines. One is the identity line and one is the action line, right? And when the two don't line up, like you're screwed. The bigger the gap between the two lines, the more out of integrity. So we say, well, how can we bridge the gap? Well, we have to change our actions. So if my identity is someone who's healthy, I need to make sure I'm eating healthy and exercising. Right? So that's what we do. Let's get on the treadmill, do 30 minutes of exercise for 30 days straight. And that then compounds into other changes that people make. But it starts with taking one dramatic action that will change everything, right? So that's an example of the concept that is living with integrity. Another concept I teach is it's called the golden rule of time management. Okay. And the golden rule of time management states that the quality of time you work determines both the quality and quantity of time you have outside of work. Okay. So, in a simple explanation, if I'm working, you have to set boundaries for work. So people say, Ian, how'd you build a 7-figure business in a year? I built my 7-figure coaching business. The average coach makes about $85,000 a year. I've done over 7 figures in coaching. It's not because I was this amazing coach. I think I talked to you. I was about 350 when we were talking. So it's blown
Impressive,
up.
yeah.
It's blown up. Fundamentally, it's not because I'm a great coach or a great business person. It's because I have really, really focused activity during the day. I only work 40 to 45 hours a week. I don't work 90-hour weeks like most founders, okay? But when I work, I'm working. So that's the golden rule of time management, is when you're working, you are really working. You're working on the right things. You're focused on what I call revenue generating activities. So my work is either delivering coaching, selling coaching, or building my pipeline for coaching. That's it. So my calendar reflects that. I'm not doing a podcast like this. As much as I would love to, I'm working core on the fundamentals of my business. I'm not doing other side work. I'm not selling an online university to businesses. I'm not like, there's a million directions you can go as an entrepreneur. But for me, I decided what I'm going to do is be focused, laser focused on one area, and everything I do is to build that area, right? And then when that gets, to a certain point, I'll shift and do some other things. But there's so many opportunities. It's not about what you're saying yes to, it's about what you're saying no to that matters. So I said no to writing a book, and I'm saying no to, running addiction groups. I'm saying no to a lot of things that frankly I would like to do, but are not in the core mission. So that concept of the golden rule of time management just is really simple. If you work a full day on the right things, you will have inner peace at night. If you don't work a full day, you will have to work at night, and you won't be as present with those that you love, your family, your spouse. And you're basically taking work home because you didn't get it done when you were supposed to. So for me, I don't have that problem. When I'm done because I actually executed what I was supposed to. Because I know if I don't, I'm robbing my lovely kids and my wife of my time and my presence, and that's not fair to them. So that's another principle I teach. And I have a lot of these frameworks and principles that I teach all about mindset habits, and then we optimize calendars. We look at where our time is spent and what we say no to and what we say yes to. And by making those fundamental changes and making sure our calendars are filled with RGAs, with revenue generating activities, you will transform your results, especially if you're in business or sales, because that's what's driving the results, right? The revenue generating activities. So those are 3 concepts. I have about 15 that I teach and that I've copyrighted, and they're very powerful. But those are kind of the 3 that a lot of people apply right away.
Yeah, those are awesome, man. Thank you so much. I mean, I love the golden rule of time management because so often, especially as we get a lot of entrepreneurs or salespeople who listen to this podcast, and so often we can feel like we're being productive, but we're really not. Or at the very least, we're not being productive on the right things. Sort of like productive procrastination, if you will, right? Oh, look how much I got done today, but none of them were revenue generating, or none of
None
them
of them
were.
mattered.
Yeah,
That's the funny thing. It's like, where did the day go? You just wasted it. You're browsing online. You're going down a rabbit hole. You're doing this thing. You got 20 windows open. You didn't finish anything. So it's like, focus. Less is more. Less is more. Fewer, but better, right? That's a huge principle. It's like, focus on the critical few. It's an 80-20 rule, right? We get 80% of results from 20% of our activities. So I'm not on Instagram. I'm on Insta for family stuff, but I'm not doing my coaching business there. I'm not on TikTok. I'm just on LinkedIn, but I went all in on LinkedIn, and that's how I got all of my revenue from my coaching business. So it's like the few, but do it really well, the few things that you do.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that I think is interesting about, kind of the level of game that you play at, right? Because, I remember we were talking about a particular deal you're working on. You're like, oh yeah, I guess Bill Gates gave him a call and like swooped in at the last minute and, stole the business away, sent it to Microsoft instead of Salesforce. I'm like, that's interesting that like a call from Bill Gates is like your competition. So like, what would you say is some tips? Maybe I have here one of the things you wrote down is like, be interested, not interesting. Like, how do you walk into a room full of like C-level executives at a Fortune 500 company and hold your own and not be intimidated? What are some tips you have there?
Yeah. So on the pure selling skills or kind of interaction skills, I mean, my number one tip for anyone listening, read a book. If you're B2B, if you're B2C, it might not apply as much, but it's still worth reading. It's called Sell Without Selling Out. Okay. And it's really about how to authentically show up as yourself, right? You do not want to, the more pressure you apply to people, the more likely, that it's going to break, right? You do not want to apply to pressure. So the way I sell is like this no pressure selling mode where it's like, I am here to help. Okay. If you don't want my help or you don't need my help, like I got plenty, it comes down to valuing your time. I got plenty of people who do. So you have to know the value of your time. And when you're desperate or when you have like this neediness, when you show up with clients, they can smell your commission breath a mile away. So remember, it's not about you. Part of like letting your ego dissolve is like realizing your goal as a sales professional is to help your clients achieve their goals or solve their problems. And that's it. If you cannot understand what their goals are or what their problems are with the areas related to what you're selling, then don't pitch. Like, do your discovery first. So when I go into a room with CEOs or C-level, like I don't treat them any different than I treat you, Andrew. I don't treat them any different. I talk to them like a human. I try to be interested in learning about them. You don't want to like be interesting to them. You actually become more interesting to people when you're interested in them, because most people just show up and they think they need to throw up and they give their pitch and they talk and they don't listen. And it's like, that's what stains our industry. That's what destroys the reputation of salespeople, is that flash talking, pressure selling, use this tactic, say this, like sleazy salesperson. And frankly, that's the opposite. I mean, I'm here talking about my faith and talking about addiction recovery. And it's like, that's how I would talk to clients. I don't like care. It's truly being authentic and making it about them. Okay. I'm not here to impress. You see, you leave the best impression with people when you stop trying to impress them. Okay. Because if you're not pressuring them, if you're genuinely there to help and understand what's going on and what their world is, you can very quickly see, is this a person who wants or needs my help? And if not, like, bye-bye. I got plenty of other people who do, right? So that's this being mission driven around like what you sell and how it helps other people versus trying to hit your quota or trying to make this money, right? That's the shift every salesperson needs to make to go from average to elite, right? The elite salespeople, they shift from inward to outward. They shift from me focused to you focused. And so when I'm on a call with a business client or whether it's a coaching prospect or whoever, I'm just trying to get to know them and see where they struggle, see their challenges, talk to them, give them support. And then, hey, if it makes sense for them to, work with me at a more deep capacity, then that's going to naturally happen. And I'm going to go through my offer with them and tell them how I can help. Right. So I don't do that until I know their situation. And I think that's the main principle that I teach is like, look, don't be attached to the outcome. This is not your outcome. It's their outcome. Be attached to their outcomes, not yours, versus like having to close the deal or make this much money at a certain event or a, at the end of the day, if you got a big pipeline, right, you don't have to stress about one deal so much. It's like you're busy. So that's also another principle, but it really is about seeing people eye to eye, not putting someone on a pedestal just because you look up to them and they're successful. If you just see your customers as people, whether it's B2C or B2B or whether it's an exec or just a peer, like if you just treat people as humans and just get to know them and understand, where they're at and see if you can help, like there's no pressure. It's going to happen naturally. And like, hey, if they don't want it, like their loss, seriously, their loss, not mine. And I think that takes a real quiet confidence and it takes a real belief in yourself and what you do to be able to get to that place. And I certainly didn't get there most of my career. It only really happened, frankly, when I started working on myself and realizing like I have nothing to prove. Like I'm here to help. And, like it did coincide with my recovery, frankly, because that's how I started thinking. And then that's how I started selling.
I love that. Yeah. And those are not coincidental, right? Like your results and your recovery and everything that went along with that. They were definitely correlative, and it's pretty cool to see. So we always ask 3 questions of every single one of our guests. The first question we ask is, what do you think the world needs most right now?
I think the world needs love, and I know that I know that's a song, right? What the world needs, but like Really, if fundamentally, if we just show up from a loving place and treat our neighbors and our friends and our family with love, like, and everyone did that, I mean, what would the world, like, what is more powerful? People are so toxic and angry and filled with the opposite of love and finding reasons to argue and hate and troll and whatever. Like, I don't play any of that, honestly. If I get some of that, it's like, it takes two to tango. So, I just don't engage with those type of people, but I try every day. I pray to show up with love and kindness for my clients, and then that gets reciprocated, and it comes back to you, and that's to me what's missing, and the source of people's misery is they're just so bitter and angry and holding on to these negative, toxic emotions, because the quality of your of your emotions is the quality of your life. So if you're filled with love and joy and gratitude, and that comes out in your interactions, like, it's only going to help everyone else and have a ripple effect.
I love it, man. Thank you so much. What 1 to 3 books do you think people should read? I know you mentioned Sell Without Selling Out. What other books should people pick up in your opinion?
My favorite book of all time is The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is a classic. It's got time management. It's got vision setting. It's got human interpersonal connections. I mean, it's just so good. That's my favorite. And I would say, in the spirit of what we were talking about, the Bible. I mean, there's just so much wisdom in the Bible in terms of how we can interact with others and where we can focus and what brings us joy and what doesn't, and just so many wise lessons. Now, I haven't read the Bible myself, but I know a lot of captions and scriptures and areas that have been really inspiring for me. And I have a little Bible app that I look at in the morning, and it's a daily devotional. It takes a second. And so I draw inspiration from the Bible. And there's one book that we talked about, the last one. I know this is 4, but if time management and procrastination and bad habits are a struggle for you, I would highly recommend a book called Eat That Frog by Brian Tracy, which is all about how to overcome procrastination and focus on the critical few. It's got the 80-20 rule. It's got time management principles, daily planning, weekly planning. I read one book a month, and I have a massive library accumulated over the past 4 to 5 years of personal development. And it's almost always around like success principles, time management. There's one I just downloaded. I'm giving you a whole list, but
You're good, man. I know it's hard. It's a hard question.
Yeah. It's Viktor Frankl, right? Who was in the Holocaust, and it's called Man's Search for Meaning, right? And finding, in no matter what situation, you choose the way you want to respond and how you want to think about it. And if Holocaust, someone could keep their inner peace and keep their mind strong, like, you can do it during the workday. Okay. So Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl as well. Those are 5. I gave you a couple bonus ones.
I love it. I love it. Final question. What does it mean to you to be better than rich?
For me, it's just to be a good person, like, be a person of integrity, of character, just show up and be kind. And if you can show up that way, also, if you can have inner peace, right? Because chasing riches, there's always another level. There's always a bigger house. There's always some, higher level of success in a worldly way that, you can achieve. But if you don't have that inner peace, or if you're not happy with yourself, like, it doesn't mean anything. So being better than rich is like you could still be ambitious, but being at peace with who you are, and realizing and having that patience to realize, like, you're doing all you can and not keep chasing and chasing and chasing the ever eluding goal of money or wealth, if you will. So I think having inner peace is a lot better than being rich, personally.
Oh, beautiful, man. Thank you so much. And this has been an amazing opportunity to get to know you more. And just thanks for being so real and adding so much value to our audience. Where can people kind of follow you and find you if they want to learn more about you?
Well, if you're in B2B sales, you can go to my website. It's called untapyoursalespotential.com. And you can learn all about my coaching program. If you want to have access to me or work with me, or anything I shared resonates, just go there. It's sold out, but there is a wait list. I'll be taking clients in December, so you can sign up for the wait list if you want to work with me. If you just want to consume some of my content, you can go to my YouTube channel. It's www.youtube.com/Ian Koniak. And then if you want to engage with me, I'm on LinkedIn. You can. I'm not really doing much on Instagram unless you want to see pictures of me and my family. But LinkedIn and YouTube and my website are where I coach, and I provide every single week new videos that I put out to help the sales community really tap into their full potential in mindset, habits, and selling skills. Those are the three areas that I make videos on.
Awesome. Yeah, your videos, they come to my inbox every single week. I don't watch everyone, but when I have time, I click on it, I'll watch it. I love them. They're quick hitting. And so he's a great follow, great person to have. Sign up for his email list and just check out the content in general, because Ian is just is a game changer when it comes to these sorts of things. So thank you, Ian. This has been amazing. Thank you, audience. We appreciate you. And remember, until next week, to leave today better than you found it. We'll see you then. Bye. What's up, guys? Biggs here. I hope you enjoyed that clip. If you did, go ahead and check out the other video that's being recommended on the screen right now. You can also subscribe to our channel. And then if you really are interested in what we do, go to automatedelegatesystemize.com to learn more about what we're up to. Thanks again.